There are letters that are never sent, and there are words we only come to understand when it's far too late, and silence is all we have left. Today, I want to share with you a very special story, a letter I found tucked away in the bedside drawer of the hospital room where my mother spent her final days. A letter that was never handed to me, with no reproach, no tears, but every word cut into my heart, softly, silently, and forever unforgettable. If you're listening to this, perhaps you're like me, once too caught up in life to notice the one who waited quietly for you each night, once thinking, "I'll call tomorrow," only to find tomorrow never came. Stay with me until the end of this story. And if you see yourself in these words, click subscribe and join me in exploring the quiet fragments of love, of family, and of all the things we never found the words to say. The letter Mom wrote from the hospital. My dear child, if you're reading these words, then perhaps I no longer have the chance to say them to you one last time. But that's all right. I wrote this letter during the longest nights at the hospital, when sleep became a luxury, and the only rhythm I heard each night was the sound of the ventilator and the footsteps of nurses in the hallway. Don't be afraid. I'm not writing to make you sad or to make you feel regret. I'm writing just so you can understand, and if possible, forgive yourself. My child, all my life, I was never good at expressing emotions. I was the kind of person who'd hold the phone for hours, just staring at your name on the screen, only to put it down before I found the courage to call. I always thought, maybe tomorrow, you're probably busy. Then tomorrow came, and once again, I didn't call. But it wasn't because I didn't miss you. It was because I was afraid. Afraid to bother you. Afraid to hear you reply in a rush. Afraid to feel small in a life that seemed too full of storms for you already. When you were little, every time you got sick, I worried myself sick too. I stayed up all night, watching over your fever, terrified the slightest wheeze meant a hospital trip. But it's different when I'm the one who's sick. When I cough, when I have a fever, when I'm in pain, I hide it. Because I'm afraid you'll worry, afraid you'll skip meals, afraid you'll come rushing home only to leave again just as quickly. The most painful thing isn't the illness, it's the feeling that I'm no longer a priority in the life of the child I once held in my arms. But my dear, I understand. You have your own life now, your job, your dreams, things I sometimes can't fully comprehend. I told myself I had to be strong, had to take care of myself, so you wouldn't have to carry that burden too. It's just that sometimes I miss you so much. I miss your laughter, miss the way you'd hug me from behind when you got home from school. I miss your frown when you had to eat vegetables, your pout when you got a tiny cut. Time passes so quickly, my child. In the blink of an eye, you've grown up. And I've started to grow smaller. You know, my dear, there's something I never told you. Every time I heard the door open, I always hoped it was you. Even when I knew you were far away, with your own life and responsibilities, that small hope took root in my heart, like a mother's old habit of setting the table for someone who no longer comes home for dinner. In the hospital, time feels like it stands still. A single day stretches like a week, and a week feels like an entire rainy season. I've had plenty of time to think about when you were little, the afternoons I'd pick you up from school, your arms clinging to my neck, your little body sweaty, and your mouth chattering non-stop about classmates and playground stories. Back then, just having you close made my life feel complete. And yet, later on, I often found myself feeling hurt when you didn't call. I knew I was being childish, but I didn't have the courage to say, "I miss you so much." I only knew how to stay silent and wait. Wait for a message, a phone call, a hug, sometimes waiting an entire month just for one. In my final days, I wasn't afraid of death. What I feared was being forgotten. I was afraid you'd be so busy, you wouldn't even notice when I'd quietly disappeared from your life. I was afraid that one day you'd glance at an old photo of me and not remember what my voice sounded like. But I don't blame you. I understand. Because I was once a child, too. I was once busy, once thinking, "I'll visit tomorrow," once rushing through life, caught in all its noise and demands. I, too, once believed my mother would always be there, until one day, she wasn't. There's only one thing I wish for, that if one day you become a parent, you'll live a little slower. Don't just be the one who provides, be the one who listens, because there are things parents don't say, not because they don't need to, but because they've grown used to doing without. My child, there's so much I want to tell you, but sometimes I just don't have the strength to write it all down. One night, I woke up at 3 a.m., staring at the dim light spilling through the hallway window, and I asked myself, if I'm gone tomorrow, would you be sad? That question made me cry, not out of fear, but out of longing. I remembered you once said, "I'll come tomorrow. I'll stop by when I'm free." But you didn't know. For someone who's sick, tomorrow is a luxury. Not everyone gets many tomorrows to wait for, my dear. My dear child, there was a day when the doctor came into my room and sat down for a long while before saying a word. His eyes weren't as distant as they had been before. I knew then, some news doesn't need to be spoken. It reveals itself in silence. A kind of silence only those who have waited for scan results would understand. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry. I just nodded and smiled, like I had already known. Truth is, my body had been giving me signs for a while. I just didn't want to admit it. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't ready to miss one more New Year's meal I hadn't cooked for you, to miss the chance to hug you when you're tired, to miss the day you'd bring someone home and say, "This is the one I love." So from that day on, I began writing these lines. Each night, I wrote a little. Some nights, just 3 lines. Some nights, a whole page. And some nights, I could write nothing except 2 words. I miss you. People often say, when you face death, you think of all the things you did wrong. But not me. I only thought of you. I remembered the morning you left for school far from home. I stood at the door, still holding a dish towel in my hand. You quickly said, "Bye, Mom," and disappeared down the narrow alley. I almost called out to remind you of something like I always did. But I stopped, because I knew you needed to grow up. And grow up, you did. So much that I no longer had a place in your daily routine. It's okay. I've accepted that. But do you know this? As people grow older, they often forget the hands that once pushed them forward. Forget who first taught them how to walk, how to speak, how to love. I don't blame you. But I hope, if one day you read these words, you will slow down just a little. Call your mom, even if it's a short call, a meaningless message, or just a smiley emoji. Because sometimes, For a mother sitting quietly in some corner of the world, just a small vibration from her phone is enough to make a long day worth waiting through. Do you know why I always called you my little treasure? Not because I love gold, but because, no matter how messy, angry, or flawed you became, in my eyes, you were always precious. Nothing could ever change that. And if I could have one last wish before I close my eyes, I wouldn't wish to live longer. I wouldn't wish to be cured. I would only wish to hear you say, "Mom, I understand now. Understand why I nagged so much. Understand why I kept repeating the smallest things. Understand why I would stare at your photos for an entire afternoon. Because to me, you were never truly a grown-up. You were always the 3-year-old who cried after falling down when I wasn't around. One time I looked out the hospital window, where people were busy living, riding their bikes, calling out to each other, eating in a rush. And suddenly, life felt like a movie in which I no longer had a role. I was just the audience, waiting for the final scene. But don't be sad, my child. I didn't write this letter to make you feel guilt or sorrow. On the contrary, I wrote it to lighten your heart. If one day I'm no longer here, live peacefully. Don't visit the cemetery too often. Don't burn offerings or paper houses. I don't need any of that. All I need is for you to be healthy, to live kindly, and not to forget how to smile. And if there comes a day when you feel empty inside, missing someone without knowing who, just close your eyes. I'll still be there, in your breath, in your dreams, in the way you treat the ones you love. Yagowi. Mayoy konlanqua. Dich sang tieng an ChatGPT Janoy. My dear child, there are things I never told you, not because I was hiding them, but because I thought they didn't matter. But as time runs out, I've come to understand. Sometimes the smallest things are what stay in someone's heart the longest. I once dreamed of taking you on a long, faraway trip to a place with white snow like in the movies. I saved every little bit I could, tucked it away in a wooden box at the bottom of the closet, and labeled it Your Snow Fund. But then life kept turning. School fees, medical bills, 100 other things. And that snow fund eventually turned into money for medicine. I don't regret the money. I just regret the dream I never got to give you. Just like I regret the time I didn't walk into your room when I saw you crying. I stood outside the door, fists clenched, heart aching, but I turned away. I thought you needed space. But now I wish I had knocked, stepped in, hugged you, and said, "Go ahead and cry, my love. I'm here." As mothers, we're taught we have to be strong. We must be patient, endure, wait in silence. But being a mother also means allowing ourselves to be imperfect. I may have made mistakes, said things that hurt you, simply because I worried too much and didn't know how to show it. Do you remember that Lunar New Year when you were in 12th grade? You were angry because I didn't let you go out with friends. You said, "You're so old-fashioned, Mom. You don't understand me at all." I pretended not to hear it, but that night, I cried alone in the kitchen. Not because I was mad at you, but because I realized you'd grown up enough not to need me as your shield anymore. Every time you picked yourself up after a failure, I felt both proud and a little sad. Proud because you were strong, but sad because you didn't come running to me like before. They say real love is not about holding someone back, but about always being there, just in case they need you. I think being a mother is like planting a tree, not to enjoy its shade for myself, but so one day that tree can grow strong enough to give shelter to someone else. My dear, I know I wasn't a perfect mom. I'm not tech savvy. I never figured out how to use Zalo properly. And I can't take cute selfies like your friends' moms. I don't know how to send a text with a heart emoji. But I tried. I tried my very best to be the best mother I could be. And of all the roles I've ever had, an employee, a wife, a neighbor, being your mom is the one I'm proudest of. If someone gave me a chance to live my life all over again, I would still choose this life, even with all its hardships, all its tears, as long as it's still you. I know I don't have much time left. Some mornings I wake up, watching the faint sunlight slip through the window, and I wonder, will I still be here to see the sunset tonight? And yet, strangely, I don't feel sad. I just feel grateful. Grateful to have had you. Grateful to have been your mother. Grateful to have once held your hand, walked you down those old rainy streets, and heard you say, "Mom, I'm cold." My dear child, if you've read this far, I know your heart must feel heavy. Maybe you're blaming yourself for not calling more often. Maybe you're remembering the afternoons when I called and you silenced your phone because you were in a meeting. Maybe you're crying. Don't. I didn't write this letter to make you sad. I wrote it so you can live. I want you to keep going, not just to survive, but to truly live. Live with everything you have. Your tears and your laughter, your unfinished dreams, and the times you've fallen and gotten back up. You are the most beautiful outcome of my life. And what I hope for most is not that you become successful, famous, or wealthy. I simply hope you never lose yourself. Don't live to please everyone, my child. The world is vast, and no one else can live your life for you. There will be days when you feel lost, when it seems no one understands you, when it feels like the whole world has turned its back. But even in those moments, I believe you are strong enough to endure. If one day you find yourself on your knees, broken, remember, that's not failure. That's life teaching us humility. I've been there too, crying alone behind a closed door, wanting to give up, feeling helpless. But then I thought of you, and I stood up again. Every morning when you open your eyes, you have two choices: live the same as yesterday, or live as the person you dream of becoming. Choose the second, because life is too short to keep postponing it. And my love, if one day you have a child of your own, I hope you'll understand why I used to worry too much, why I couldn't sleep until you came home, why I would sit for an hour just to watch you eat one more bowl of rice. That's what being a parent is. We don't need thanks. We just want to be remembered. Tell your child about their grandmother, the woman who wrote this letter in sleepless hospital nights, the one who didn't know how to use social media, never live streamed, but knew how to love without ever needing to show it off. I don't need a statue. I don't need to be honored. I only hope that if one day someone asks you, who was the first person to teach you how to love, you'll smile and say, my mother. My beloved child. As I write these final words, I feel my hands growing tired. My eyes aren't as clear as they used to be. The letters blur beneath the dim yellow light of this hospital room. But still, I want to keep writing, because I know, if I don't, I'll carry with me too many things you never got to hear. Have you ever thought about death? I have. but not as an ending. To me, it feels like watching you board a bus to go study far away. I stood there, waving, until the bus disappeared from sight. Then, walked back home. Empty. But not sad. Because I knew you were heading off on a new journey. And even though I couldn't go with you, I would always be watching from afar. Death is like that too. I won't be beside you anymore, at least not in the way you once knew. I won't text to remind you to come home for dinner, won't peel oranges for you, won't nag you to bring an umbrella when it rains. But I believe, if you listen closely enough, you'll still feel me there. In the soft afternoon breeze, in the smell of warm rice on a rainy day, in your own eyes, when you look at someone you love, with all the tenderness in the world. I'm not taking anything with me. Everything I cherished most in this life, I've already left behind. And that is you. By the time you read this, I may already be resting peacefully. Please, don't cry, my love. The truth is, I still had many dreams left undone. I wanted to see you one day, standing in your wedding clothes, smiling with joy. I wanted to hold your child in my arms, stroke their cheek and say, when your dad was your age, they used to wet the bed all the time. But I'm not sad, because I know you'll live the rest of this life for me. You'll love, forgive, and walk the paths I didn't get the chance to. I only have one last wish. When you're tired, don't try to act strong. When you're hurting, don't bottle it up and carry it alone. And when you miss me, don't try to forget. Remember me, in any way you like. A cup of hot tea, an old song, a meal you cook for yourself, a phrase you repeat, because once I said it to you. Live slowly, live deeply, and don't be afraid of pain, because pain is how we remember we once loved something with all our heart. And so, Mom has come to the final lines. The room is quiet now. Only the soft hum of the ventilator remains, and the pale yellow light quietly spills onto the corner of the table. A young nurse just brought me a cup of warm milk. I take a small sip, then set it down. The scent brings back memories of long ago nights when you were just a child, resting your head on my arm, breathing softly like a little kitten. You're grown now. Perhaps you're living in another city, surrounded by the chaos and responsibilities of adulthood. I understand. Your world is no longer made up of the afternoons I took you to school or the nights you sat beside me doing homework. But I am still here, and I always will be, even if not in the form you once knew. If one day you feel worn down by life, if your heart feels empty, and no one seems to truly hear you, if you look up at the sky and don't even know what to pray for anymore, remember me. You don't need to say anything, just be still. Close your eyes and let your heart speak, because in the depths of your loneliness, you'll hear my voice, like an old lullaby, still waiting for you to come home. You may live to be 80, 90 years old. You may face countless ups and downs, love and heartbreak, success and failure. But I believe, no matter how much the world changes, one thing will remain constant: a mother's love for her child. Unconditional, immeasurable, unbreakable. I don't want to end this letter with goodbye, because I believe we'll meet again. Maybe not in a specific place, but in a rainy afternoon, a familiar song, a dream. And when that happens, you'll smile and say, "Mom, I'm okay. I'm living well. You don't have to worry anymore." Yes, that's enough for me. If you live kindly, live with love, live the way I once taught you, then I can close my eyes with a smile. Farewell, my dear child, and thank you for giving me a life full of meaning. Mom, if your mother is still with you, call her today. Don't wait until tomorrow. And if she's already gone, then live in a way that honors the love she once poured into you, quietly, silently, but never fading. Click subscribe if you saw yourself in this story. Share it as a gentle reminder that love never dies. It simply changes form and stays forever in the heart.